Good evening, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island, and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We will now have a moment of silent reflection, followed by the playing of our national anthem. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Okay, if we can get an adoption of the agenda for July 23rd, 2024 regular council meeting. Councillor Rachel Spagnolo and Councillor Carrick, all in favor? That carries. Any disclosures of opinion or interest? There being none, if we can adopt the minutes of our regular meeting of council held July 9th, 2024. Councillor Burns, Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries as well. Mayor's comments. We're always looking at new ways to meet our residents, and we tried to do this a couple weeks ago and had to cancel due to the rain. But for the second time this year, we'll be hosting a Mayor on Location, which will take place this Thursday, July 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Turtle Club. So join us there. This Sunday is our July night market held at the LaSalle Civic Center from 4 to 8 p.m. And I don't know how that's possible because I'm pretty sure I just did the June night market. But I guess we're already at the end of July, so I don't know what happened there. And finally, I want to wish our very own Kylie Moss, a 4-time Olympic medalist who is a competitive swimmer from LaSalle, good luck as she represents us again at the Olympics. Not only is she competing in the 2024 Paris Olympics, she was named a team co-captain of the Canadian swimming team. So congratulations, Kylie, good luck, and the games begin this Friday. We have no public meetings in our hearings, no presentations or delegations. We'll move into our staff reports. Item 1 is a request from LaSalle Pickleball Association, and we're going to turn over to our Director of Culture and Recreation, Ms. Finero.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm going to share my screen with you just to give you a visual. There we go. Of course, now I can't see my, just bear with me, sorry. Just want to find my, if I get out of this now, am I going to take it off the screen? My apologies, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this without removing it from the screen, but also being able to see my notes. I don't think I can do that. Okay, so good evening, your worship and members of council. My apologies. So this evening we have representatives from LaSalle Pickleball Association here to make a request. They did meet with the mayor earlier in the year, and they met with members of administration as well. And what their request was in order to meet the growing demand of pickleball players in our community, they were asking if we would consider repurposing 2 of the 4 tennis courts that are located at Front Road and make those dedicated pickleball courts. After that meeting, administration met internally to look at some of the options and to estimate some of the costs. And in our discussions with Public Works and Parks, determined that in order to make it exclusively usable for pickleball and to get rid of the tennis lines, we would need to completely resurface the courts, which would come at a cost of approximately $75,000. That, coupled with the fact that we are slated to remove those courts because of the waterfront development in the coming years, along with the fact that we are about to embark on the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan, which will seek public consultation and give us some direction on the number of courts that we need and what amenities we may wish to remove or add or repurpose. Along with the fact that we do not have any dollars earmarked in the 2024 budget in order to complete a project like this, we don't feel it's advisable at this time to make those courts exclusively used for pickleball. However, we are proposing that we make it a dual use, which is what I have on the screen right now. So we could take 2 of the courts and create 6 pickleball courts out of it. The tennis nets would remain up, and we would provide temporary pickleball courts that would be locked, and users would be provided a key if they were interested in making use of those, and they would be set up and taken down as they're being used. This would provide an option to still have 2 dedicated tennis courts, as well as have these courts remain usable for tennis should they not be being used for pickleball, be operated on a first-come, first-served basis. And then this would provide a temporary solution while we finish the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan and explore the opportunity to potentially bring forward the pickleball courts slated to be built at the Vollmer as part of the 2025 budget. So that is my report. I believe we have the Pickleball Association representatives registered as delegates, so I will turn it over to them, and then I'm certainly available should there be any questions from administration.
Thank you. Mr. Boosie, the president of the LaSalle Pickleball Association, will have you come forward.
Hello, Madam Mayor and Town Councilors. My name is Dave Bussey, and I'm the president of the Pickleball Association in LaSalle. Thank you, Patty, for your presentation. Our purpose here tonight, we are in support of the presentation that Patty has made. However, there are some concerns that we have with it. We had went to the town with a request that 2 of the tennis courts on Front Road be turned into 6 pickleball courts. We knew that there wasn't any money in the budget for this. We wanted it to be as cost effective as possible, and we also indicated that we'd be willing to raise money through sponsors and donors to do this. And we said at the time that we're okay with temporary nets. We're okay with the tennis nets staying there, but we did need these courts to be dedicated pickleball courts and not multi-use. The problem with the multi-use courts as we see them, and I hope you have my presentation that I forwarded there, the demand for pickleball in LaSalle has grown exponentially since I started to play, and there's a huge demand. There isn't enough pickleball courts in LaSalle now. And as a first-come, first-serve scenario with multi-use, just 2 people playing tennis could take 4 pickleball courts out of action. So that means that you have, well, the diagram is gone, but essentially if two are used, if 2 people play tennis, you can't use 4 pickleball courts, which is 16 people who wouldn't be able to play. So it would, in our minds, it wouldn't be all that workable. So we thought as a compromise, and what would make sense is that the courts don't need to be resurfaced in our mind. The resurfacing, as we understand it, was because of the thought that we wanted the nets removed from tennis and permanent nets installed. You can imagine that drilling into the surface would require resurfacing. We're only asking for temporary nets. All we want is painted pickleball courts and temporary nets. And then, if these are dedicated pickleball courts, it would go a long ways to alleviating the demand that is in LaSalle for pickleball. And the only thing that I can add as an analogy that, you know, all Canadians understand is a hockey rink analogy. The town has hockey rinks. You can imagine you have skating rinks as a town. If they're only open to first come, first serve, there'd be no way to organize minor hockey. There'd be no way to organize figure skating. If someone decided to go skating, they could block anyone else from using it. So it's the same thing with the demand that's now there for pickleball. There's just so many people. It has to be organized and has to be a system in place so that we can maximize the use of these courts. So that is our ask. We don't think it's a big ask, given the amount of people that are now interested in playing pickleball. Also added in our presentation the number of pickleball courts that the surrounding jurisdictions have, and certainly they are far surpassed LaSalle, and all of their jurisdictions have added large pickleball facilities to help with the demand, and in LaSalle, we don't have that. And in order for us to organize and better use the facilities and make pickleball open to everyone, we need a dedicated site where we can do this, and a multi-use site wouldn't allow us to do that. So that's really the points I wanted to make. I don't want to go through all of my report because I know I only have 5 minutes and I just wouldn't be able to get to all that. But it's there for you guys to look at, and I hope it sort of covers what we're looking for. So if there's any questions, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I will allow questions now from council members to administration. Councillor Reno and then Deputy Mayor Capata.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm not sure if this will go to Patty or to Don. I think many of us can relate to the fact that over the last number of years, we get a lot of feedback about pickleball and about having more courts, having more accessible courts, indoor, outdoor, facilities. What I don't hear a lot about is the tennis population. And I'm sure they have a voice as well. They just don't seem to be as loud as the pickleball voice. And I'm just wondering, have we gotten any kind of feedback about our new facilities that we put out at the Ballmer? When I go past the tennis courts on Front Road, I don't necessarily see them being used as much. And, for the suggestion that we take out tennis for dedicated pickleball, I just want to know if there's any kind of conversation that we're unaware of with the tennis population and what their needs may be, and if that kind of loss of courts would cause a problem in the community.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Reno. To my knowledge, there's not been any specific feedback regarding needing more tennis courts or they're not being able to meet demand. The courts at the Ballmer certainly are well used, and the ones at Front Road are used from time to time. I don't have any specific data on that. We haven't tracked that. I think one of the reasons that administration is recommending that we do a temporary dual-use solution right now is that would give us the opportunity to seek feedback from the tennis community as part of the master planning process, and have an understanding of what the requests are and where the demands are, without making a change to remove something completely.
Deputy Mayor Akpata? Oh, go ahead.
Just to update, so when we did do consultation on the waterfront back prior to COVID, there was a very active tennis group that spoke to us, which I believe at the time was why we put the tennis courts in at the Valmer, knowing that the tennis courts at Front Road at some point will be rendered not being used there. So from that point of view, there was a very active tennis community in Windsor-Essex County. They talked a lot about lessons and groups and stuff for all ages as well. So my guess is that tennis group would still be there, but as Ms. Venero said, we would find out more through the Culture and Rec Master Plan.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the gentleman, just a couple of questions, sir. I heard John Amy 800 this morning as I was driving to work, and I just want to make sure that I understand so that the decision that I make is based. You said here that all you're looking for is paint and lines, so I'm going to assume, I live very close to Front Road, so I spend a lot of time walking my dog there, and I don't have a statistical number in my head, but I can see people playing there. Is that all you're looking for, is paint and the lines and things like that? That's what I understand, sir?
Yes, we're cognizant of the fact that to get a new facility built at the Valmer is the ultimate goal for us. It's not going to happen overnight. So this is a temporary solution because demand is so great. So what we showed we had a look at the diagram. 6 courts can fit there with the tennis nets left. There will almost be like a divider between 3 courts on one side and 3 on the other. So all we want is paint on top of the surface that's there, painting out the pickleball courts, and the nets, we'd be satisfied with temporary nets, which you can put up and take down, especially if the facility is locked, because you won't, with temporary nets, you have a problem, maybe they could disappear, but, so that's what we're looking for. It's not a really expensive, the resurfacing was a $75,000 price tag that I saw there. We're not asking, the surface at Tennis Road, on Front Road is excellent. It was resurfaced in the very recent past. So it's much better surface than what we have now at Marcotte, where we play. So we'd be certainly satisfied with the surface that's there. We want paint and nets.
And also just to clarify, the difference between is what's being presented is an agreement on administration's part saying, yes, we can do the paint and nets. They're asking for the exclusive use. So that would be taking the tennis more or less out. I mean, the courts aren't going to change as far as resurfacing, but the report presented to us tonight is leaving it as tennis and pickleball, so both can use it, or what's being requested is it becomes solely pickleball, same cost.
Understood, Your Worship, and I guess a supplemental to the gentleman, if it was pickleball and tennis, and just as presented by administration, if pickleball was the primary use and the nets stayed up, and when pickleball wasn't there, tennis was there, would that be acceptable to the group if we put pickleball first / tennis? So again, I'm looking at sharing the facility, but just the primary use to be pickleball. If the pickleballers aren't there, then tennis would take place. Is that what we're saying? I'm just putting it backwards as opposed to tennis, pickleball, pickleball, tennis, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think maybe administration might be able to kind of answer that. So it's first come, first serve. So if someone, what the comment is someone came in to play tennis and they chose court 1, that would actually render 4 pickleball courts useless. So that's the concern that they have is, yes, we could call it pickleball / tennis courts, but if the tennis players show up first, that again removes that ability for us to use 4 of those courts for pickleball. And are we looking at either way? The pickleball items are locked, right? Is what you're saying, either way? Okay.
I understand. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carrick, and then Councillor Burns.
So I guess it comes down to how many tennis courts do we have in the town? I know there's one up on my end, out Heritage Drive. It gets used, but not that much, but it does get used. And the ones at the Valmer I see getting used somewhat, the ones in Front Road a little bit. So I guess the concern I have is the limited numbers, and I've gotten complaints about the one, no offense, about the noise on Marcotte Park. So and I passed that on to our administration. So I'm okay with even looking at a permanent solution for the two courts, to be honest, because then that gives them dedicated spots, and unless they can come up with some kind of scheduling, where pickleball gets to schedule it all first, and then whatever left over, the options could be time for tennis. So if there's a couple blocks for tennis, that's so be it. But pickleball should have first priority, because it's almost impossible to have 16 people show up, and if 4 people are playing tennis, that's not appropriate. I don't think that's probably right. So, not that I'm going against tennis, but 16, and pickleball is growing like crazy. So if we can accommodate some now, and understand that you guys are moving forward with fundraising, because stuff isn't cheap, and it's very expensive to do this new stuff. So any bit of sponsorship and support will be much appreciated down the road to make it grow even better and put proper facilities in place. So I'm pretty much looking at it that way. Either way, I'm okay with making it permanent, or if we come up with a permanent schedule where pickleball gets it first, and then there's some blocks left over, it can be open for tennis after that.
I think the problem is we're not scheduling it. We don't have someone who's going to oversee the scheduling of who uses those facilities.
Okay, then that makes my decision easy. They can have it.
Counselor Burns?
Okay, there's also a tennis court on Gulfview Drive. I believe we have access or some working arrangement with the tennis courts in River Canard. But if you're going to have tennis show up first, that's going to be pickleball tennis rage, is exactly what's going to happen. And what it's going to put is people my age, somewhere between 55 and 80, fighting those young lads, 19 and 20-year-olds, 6'3", and say, get off my tennis court. And I visioned that as soon as you said what you said. So I think we either have to make a decision that certain hours, it's pickleball, after that, it's tennis. It can't be in between, and I like Councillor Carrick's analogy of first choice. If this is a deficiency, we have to make something work like that. And to the tennis players, I've never heard from them. There's only one. They used to like to play in Gulfview because nobody else knew it was there. And the ones in front row were ratty back then, and that's where all falling apart. But my next question only question to administration is, show me how the courts we have, what utilization do we have there? You know, is it 1 hour a day, 5 hours a day? I mean, I know I drive by Sunday through the town, and I don't see these courts being used very much. So I don't know what the answer is there or how we gauge that, but my final comment is it has to be specific times for them and no tennis allowed, or our police department be down there to figure out why these kids are just there making your life miserable. And trust me, that will happen.
Okay. I feel like our police may have a better use of their time. Just a thought. A little bit, okay. But I agree with your comments, but I'm going to go back to Councillor Carrick's comment. We don't schedule those facilities, and that's not something we have planned. So to me, that we shouldn't even consider that as an option. I mean, we're going down a completely different path if that's what we want. That's another report. Ms. Finero, I don't know if you want to comment any more on the usage. I know you did already, where we don't really have any data for Front Road Park. And I don't even know if there's a way for us to really get data for Vollmer, because it's just, again, drop in. I don't know I know Scott's got all the numbers, but I don't know if he is that one.
Thank you, Mayor Malash, for the question. We don't have data because, as you said, we don't have someone who supervises those facilities, and we haven't scheduled them, the courts in the past, as you said. It's not to say that that's not something we could do in the future, but again, our recommendation is to let the master planning process take place so that we can get those recommendations and look at what's being done elsewhere and make sure that we're being consistent, and we've heard from the public. In terms of data, I do believe that there is some drop-in data collection going on occasionally. When staff have time, they may pop out and take a look at what's being, how many people there are on the tennis courts and on the splash pad and some other areas. But again, that depends on the availability of staff and what's going on within the facility. And if we have someone that can run out and just do a quick count, it's not something that's happening on a consistent basis at this point in time.
So maybe answer one other question. I know you asked, how many tennis courts do we have in the town of LaSalle, and how many outdoor pickleball courts?
Thank you for the question. We have 10 tennis courts and 5 pickleball courts.
Thank you. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you, through you. I think in listening to both sides, I think scheduling it is just another task that we don't necessarily have staff for. I think I live near Front Road. I don't see the tennis courts used a whole lot, to be very honest. Sorry to say that, but that's the truth. I'm leaning towards just making Front Road pickleball courts, having it there, and we have our tennis courts out at the Valmer and out on 6th Concession. I think we've got enough right there. I don't think we need to be adding task to our staff to go out and count people, and see how many there are. I think they're being used, and I think that's all we're looking at. So I would be willing to make the motion to support the resolution for the, make the 6 and spend the 10 grand.
Yes, that's not what's put before us. That's okay. And before we go to that point, just to clarify, there's 3 tennis courts currently on Front Road, or 4?
There's 4 tennis courts.
So we're going to leave 2 tennis.
Yes.
And 2 will be converted possibly to just pickleball or be a combo. That's
Correct.
okay. So the recommendation is to leave it as a joint pickleball tennis. So you'd be making a new motion. So your motion is to convert 2 tennis courts into 6 pickleball courts at a cost of $10,000 and allow the master plan to play out to see what other changes may be made in the future. Yes, Councillor Rios-Pignolo.
Thank you. Through you. So if we were to do that, you were looking at doing fundraising and sponsorships. So then you would have to do it that way, because if you did it the other way and you had half tennis and half pickleball, then people who are sponsoring strictly pickleball are now going to get recognition for tennis as well, right? Unless you have a wall. I know there's courts that have the walls up that are deemed only for the sponsorships, right? For your specific area. I do agree that I think that the Front Road should be pickleball courts. That's
Mr. Milsha?
Thank you, Mayor Meloche. Maybe just a couple of contextual comments to assist council. The reason why the recommendation is put in the fashion that it is that we were trying to be respectful of the tennis community who had previously come forward to us and requested an enhancement in tennis. We didn't want to put council in a situation where they would make a change and then the subsequent meeting, you'd have the tennis group in saying, why did you make that change? We spoke to you about this as part of an official process in terms of determining that. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't make a change. That's not to say that, pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in North America. So that's not to say that there isn't a need here in LaSalle. And Councilor Burns, I did receive a text from my daughter who, Sophia, who is watching, happy birthday, which was this week. She's a 20-year-old pickleballer, so it's not just for folks of your age, it's for young people too.
I get that. Most tennis players are that age.
So I think we were trying to be respectful of the fact that we had a group come forward and we didn't want to put council in a situation, and that's where the dual purpose comes in. With the dual purpose comes the conflict. There's no doubt about it. I think, I believe that the situation that the Pickleball Association has brought forward, it will happen. I also would say that the opposite will happen is that, you'll get 4 tennis people there and 2 pickleballers, and that may happen as well. Now, in that location, perhaps not, but that is possibly going to happen. How we were trying to, quite frankly, put forth a solution that is relatively low cost to get us to a point, to get us over the hump, so that we could then let the master plan play out. The Pickleball Association will be invited to participate in the master plan, as will any other group that wants to come forward and express an interest for recreational activities. So I think from that perspective, that's why it's crafted the way it is. Quite frankly, we have no issue dedicating it entirely to pickleball, but we may hear back from the tennis community that we've now taken away that service that we currently had. So that's the only risk that we will run, and again, excuse me, council will, should the tennis folks get together and come forward, we'll have to deal with that at that point in time. So that's a bit of that context. On a go-forward basis, I would say that, there's a number of ways that courts are managed by municipalities. Some are exactly what we do right now. They're free to use. They're first come, first serve. And in most cases, that works quite effectively. It doesn't capture the data that some members of council are looking for. We just, because we don't rent them, it's not like minor hockey that we can say we rent so many hours of ice and can do a metric on that. Much like saying which park is the most popular park. We know that anecdotally, but we don't keep track of people that are attending parks because it's that type of facility. And in a lot of cases, outdoor facilities are in that realm and that frame. Again, not to say that, in talking with my colleagues around the county that have more extensive pickleball facilities, they are at beyond capacity. If you think about the Tecumseh, and I think they set up 12 courts there, they have a waiting list of well over 200 people to get on there. So, putting 6 courts into, it's not going to solve the problem. It will help, absolutely, but this is a much larger problem that we will need to, if we want to solve it, we'll need to have a much more expansive solution to. And so what we are trying to do, quite frankly, is put forward a solution that is going to kind of walk the line, quite frankly, and satisfy hopefully both areas until we got to a point where we can put a permanent plan in place and go forward with that.
Thank you. First of all, you're in trouble for calling out your daughter, but happy birthday, Sophia. And I appreciate the comments because I have spoke to the tennis community over the past few years and even just a few months ago, and they were very vocal, though I'm not sure they're as intimidating as the pickleball community and their numbers. So I'm not scared of them. But I do agree that we have a lot of tennis currently in the community, and when you say 10 to 5, it shows we're lacking in pickleball, and we know it's growing. So I think what's being presented, and I think what council is hoping to agree with tonight by creating just 6 pickleball, I think that's very fair. And I think we've built the tennis. They have beautiful facilities. There is a plan to eventually build onto that, so it's not like we've forgotten about them. So I think it's fair. My only question to Ms. Finero would be about the key lock issue that we're looking at. So if someone wanted to play down there, it's just pickleball. They still have to come and register with the town to be able to ever go use those facilities. Is that, unless they had their own tents or nets at home. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We would go through the registration process so we're aware of who has keys and access to the equipment, much like we did. It was quite a number of years ago, but when we first opened the pickleball courts at Vince Marcotte Park, that was how we did it. We had it locked up. So they would be locked in bins. And, we haven't gotten to the point of discussing exactly how that would work, but it would be a similar process where they would register with us and they would be given a key that they can use.
Okay, just because I do remember when we did that at Marcotte, and I thought we had a few issues from residents coming forward saying they didn't think it was a fair process, that they had to go get a key. And so I just wasn't sure if we were going to kind of run into those same issues again.
Again, I don't know. I don't recall residents saying it wasn't fair. At the time, we charged a small fee, just I think as a revenue generation source, I guess. And there was some reports that people were sharing the keys. I'm not sure that this would be a significant revenue generator, so I don't think we would be looking at charging, or if we were, it would be a very nominal fee to cover the cost of having the keys made. So that would prevent complaints in that sense, I think, that the cost.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds, do you have another question?
More of a comment. Just back to the comment about the tennis community, and I mean, I was looking for some input from them, which I haven't gotten through my own channels, but knowing now that there's 10 tennis courts out there and only 5 pickleball, and knowing how many more pickleballers are asking for time and space, I agree with Councillor Desjardins that I don't have a problem taking down those tennis nets and allowing them to have a dedicated facility, because, you know, tennis is also a first come, first serve, and if they show up, there's 2 courts waiting for them on the other side of the brick wall, because there's 4 courts there, right? So if we make 2 of them just pickleball, there's still 2 tennis courts there. I think the majority of what I remember, and my memory is not as good as Councillor Burns, his is really good, but I don't remember when tennis came to us, it being a question of we didn't have enough courts for tennis. I think it was more the quality of the courts at Front Road, and they were looking for an enhancement. And they did. They got an $800,000 enhancement in the end. So I don't think the loss of 2 courts to the tennis community is going to be significant. There's still there'll still be 8 courts out there. And I agree with Councillor Desjardins. I think it should just take down the center nets, make it, we're not going to put up permanent nets because we know that's the $75,000. And let's face it, in the end, that extra $65,000 is going to be the $65,000 that is going to be put into the solution that will come from the master plan. And maybe we'll all get surprised and the master plan will say we need twice as many tennis courts. But out of respect for that process, we can still let that happen, because really in the end, these are throwaway courts anyway. They're slated to come out anyway. If we can give our community a little bit of joy for the next few years, I personally would like to see it dedicated to strictly pickleball. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Regis Bignall, did you have a question earlier? I think I saw you. No, you're good? Okay. So just to clarify, just so we have it written down correctly, we are looking, the motion is to not remove, because we're not taking the courts out, dedicate this 2 tennis courts to become 6 pickleball courts at the cost of $10,000, which is for the paint and nets. Okay. And that was moved by Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Reno. All in favor? No one's opposed. That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So item 2, I guess we kind of already started talking about it, but it's the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan Contract Award, and we'll go again to our Director of Culture and Rec, Ms. Finero.
Thank you, and good evening again. The report before you is with respect to the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan Contract Award. We did put out a request for proposals for the preparation of this master plan, and we received 3 submissions. Of those 3 submissions, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants scored the highest number of points, and therefore we're recommending that we award them the contract at a cost of $129,920. And I'm available should there be any questions.
Thank you. Members of Council, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I understand your scoring procedure. Have they done it anyplace else that we could look to see how successful they'd be, just for my own consumption?
Certainly, there was a number of them that were done in the Essex County area, for sure the city of Windsor. And I cannot recall off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that information and send it out to you. But there was quite a number of similar plans done in other communities of similar size and right within our region.
Thank you. Because of some of the county committees I sit on with some of the Windsor councillors, I'm aware of that specific document. I didn't know that they'd done it, so thank you very much.
Councillor Burns.
Okay, these are the one you're recommending. How many other people enter or either tender or request for proposal for this Parks Master Plan?
Thank you for
Because
the
I only
question.
have this, that they scored the highest, but I have no comparables. If anybody else bid it, tendered it, what were their marks to make a decision?
So there were 3 in total, and those were scored according to a process that was set out with our procurement officer, and they scored the highest.
Okay. I appreciate that there were 3, but I would like to see that in the next report that comes forward. I think that there's 3, I'd like to see the scoring, like to know who the companies were, and are they the only ones that gave us a price? Or is the price came after you scored them?
Counselor Burns? I'm not sure we can disclose that, but I will go to Mr. Langlois.
Thank you. So requests for proposals are a little bit different than tenders where they give a price and we kind of, it's strictly based on price and we list the prices usually for council to see and we select the lowest price. With a request for proposal, there's a scoring mechanism. That mechanism is determined in advance before the proposal document goes out. It's usually based, I don't know exactly what this one was, but there's a price component that's worth so many points, a percentage of the points. There's usually references, past history, experience of the team and whatnot. And because, you don't usually, with a study like this, you don't necessarily want to select the lowest cost because sometimes they don't have the experience. So they could be significantly less cost than some of the others bidding on the project, but there could be someone who's a little bit more who has very good experience, which is going to give us a better product in the end. Now, with this process and the marks, we actually, all the marks are provided, and the last part that's opened is the financial component, so that it doesn't skew any bias based on just price. So all the other components are rated first, and then once those are locked in, then we look at the price. But with requests for proposals, we don't give the scores out in public document into the public just because if someone scored really low, we don't want to necessarily advertise that and prevent them from getting business elsewhere into the future. But there is significant due diligence and a process followed, and there is a financial component to the whole process. But if it's just strictly based on price, we would definitely provide those prices in the council report.
Councilor Burns?
To follow up, I understand all of that, but based on what I have in front of me, can't prove it to me. And that's the problem I have here. I mean, I think I should be entitled to see those scores. If you don't want them disclosed, that's fine. But it should come in some form, whether it's an in-camera meeting we do it at, but it should come in some form so that we can say, yeah, I concur. But I don't know how to concur here. And it's a first. Because normally we have all the information. I don't have all the information. And I won't debate it with anybody, but that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. There's a recommendation. So the recommendation put before us is that the report of the Director of Culture and Rec dated July 3rd, 2024 regarding the selection of consultants to prepare a Parks Rec Culture Master Plan be received, and that Monteith Brown Planning Consultants Limited be awarded the contract at a cost of $129,920, and further that Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute an agreement between the town and Monteith Brown. That is a recommendation.
Can I make the recommendation with a comment?
Sure.
So yes, I will make the recommendation for the fact that what we just had earlier, pickleball, tennis courts, parks and rec parks, I mean, throughout the town, the necessity to upgrade everything, to know what we have, where we're going, where the growth is. So it's important that we move this forward and we find out which direction we can go in and what we can be accommodated down the road. Thank you.
Okay. I do have one question. If you have a mover, can I ask a question still? I just have a question on the timeline. It says July 2024, completing no later than June of 2025, yet in the last report, we talked about putting pickleball in the 2025 budget. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that is correct. We do know there is a demand for pickleball, whether it's 8 courts or 12 courts or 10 courts. We're not quite sure, how we benchmark against other communities. Our intention is to see if we can get that information sort of in advance of the report so that we have that information. Alternatively, I think we could put a ballpark figure in the budget for 2025 and then sort of maybe tweak the project once we have the full report.
And just to follow up, is a year normally how long it takes to do one of these reports? It just seems like a really long time before we get any information. Can't really plan for next year if we're waiting a whole year just to get the report.
I think this is pretty standard for a project of this scope, particularly because we're covering parks, recreation, and culture. And certainly by the time you do the public engagement, meetings with our stakeholders and our internal staff and members of council, and then give them time to, review the data and the information and prepare a report, I think this is pretty standard.
Okay. Moving the recommendation, support, Councillor Reno, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item 3, our 2023 audited financial statement, Manager of Finance, Deputy Treasurer, Mr. Ferrero.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The report before you seeks the approval of the town's 2023 financial statements. Upon approval, the statements will be used to complete provincial reporting and will be publicly available on the town's website. The town continues to be in a strong and healthy financial position. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our finance team, in particular Ms. Anson and Ms. Sagart from accounting, as well as other members of administration for their help with completing the statements and the audit process. Our external auditors, KPMG, are here for a presentation, Ms. Dembach and Ms. Pellerin. And at the conclusion of the presentation, we are available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We will turn it over to, I don't know if it's Ms. Pellerin or Mr. Denbach, who's going to take over?
I'll start. Thank you very much. And thank you for having us here this evening. We've prepared an audit findings report that was included in your package to provide you with the required and the relevant information with respect to the audit of the fiscal 2023 financial statements for the town. My name is Katie Dembach. I'm the audit partner on the engagement, and I have with me Emily Pellerin, who is the audit manager. And what we'd like to do briefly with you is just walk through the highlights of the report. We won't walk through the entire thing, but there were a couple of new accounting standards this year and a couple of adjustments made. So we'll walk you through those, and we'll be available to respond to questions if there are any. So I'll hand it to Emily.
We'll look at the highlights. So if you do have the findings report in front of you, the highlights is on page 4. So as of today, in terms of an audit status update, we have completed our testing and audit work with the exception of our standard items that you see year over year, our discussions with you, your approval of the financial statements, and the signing of the management representation letter. As you will see on this slide and the subsequent slides as well, we had the implementation of asset retirement obligations and financial instruments this year. So we did do additional work to address the appropriateness of the town's scoping and consideration of these standards. In both cases, there wasn't an impact to the town for the current year when it comes to the face of the financials. However, you will see throughout the statements that note disclosure has been added. So we have looked at those as well to determine whether they are appropriate for the town. I will now pass it back to Katie to go over the corrected misstatement that was identified during the course of the audit.
Thank you. So the last page we really wanted to draw your attention to is page 9 of our report. So you will see in the appendix to the management representation letter that we've included in Appendix C here that we did identify an audit adjustment that has been corrected in the financial statements that you've received. It's been corrected in both the 2023 year and in the 2022 columns, which have been marked as adjusted. So during the course of the audit, management identified certain items that had been misclassified between deferred revenues and reserve funds and accounts payables in previous year. So went through an analysis to identify and apply the relevant public sector handbook criteria to each type of fund to ensure that it was correctly classified. Management has evaluated the impact of the adjustment and does not consider it material, as it has no impact to the cash available to the funding received or receivable by the town or any other key financial metrics. It's really more the geography within the financial statements of where it sits. And KPMG has agreed with this evaluation, and so you'll see that the required note disclosure has been included in the financial statements as note 16, and we'll also be including an other matters paragraph in our auditor's report just to describe this matter to the reader of the financial statements. The remainder of our audit findings report just contains required communications, as well as in the appendices, some thought leadership of areas of interest that we thought might be beneficial to the councillors, hot topics that we're seeing discussed around audit committee and board tables that we wanted to share with you, but nothing specific to highlight for the town. So that's all we wanted to highlight, and certainly happy to take questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Burns?
In your report on page 56, adjustment to comparable information, is that what you're talking about? Then I noticed that under total liabilities, reported as 148 million some dollars, an adjustment of 45 million, down to 103. Can you, I'm not an accountant, so did we have 148 and we only have 103? I don't know. And then you go through the statement, there's various differences down from that. But could you maybe extrapolate a few of those for me so I wrap my head around it, please? Thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and I welcome management to supplement my response as needed. But you can see in note 16 to the financial statements where disclosure has been made regarding all of the changes as a result of this. But the largest ones had to do with some internally reserved funds that had been previously recorded as deferred revenue, which is a liability on the statement of financial position. Upon further investigation, it was determined that because there were internal restrictions on these funds rather than external restrictions, the more appropriate treatment would be to remove them from the liabilities line and then reserve them within your accumulated surplus.
Thank you.
Mr. Langlois?
So these statements are in a PSAB reporting format. Internally, we budget completely different than how these are presented. So that the adjustment, although it looks like a large dollar value, it has absolutely no impact on our operations or money in the bank or interest we've earned. It's just basically how it's recorded on our balance sheet. It's recorded, instead of being put in a liability account, it's included under, it's just shifted down to the accumulated surplus line item. So it's really just moving from one line and putting it in a different line, so.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Burns?
Page 48, then, does that explain the summary of audit misstatement schedules? Thank you very much.
That's correct.
Okay. No other questions? There being none, recommendations that the report of the Manager of Finance Deputy Treasurer dated June 12, 2024 regarding the 2023 audited financial statements be received and that Council approves and adopts the 2023 audited financial statements. Moved by Councillor Desjardins, support. Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, all in favor? And that is carried. No opposed? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Denbach and Pellerin, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4 is our 2024 Asset Management Plan, and we'll go to our Manager of Finance and Deputy Treasurer, Tano Ferro.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Once again, sorry, we have a brief presentation that is on the screen. So we have a brief presentation here on asset management, and the report seeks your approval for the town's 2024 asset management plan, which builds on our previous asset management plans by incorporating non-core assets into the plan. The start of the town's asset management process can be traced back to 2009 with the introduction of tangible capital asset reporting. This began the introduction of recording capital assets for municipalities. Municipalities were, at that time, began to be responsible to record capital assets such as roads and buildings on the financial statements. This had no impact on the budget process, but changed financial statements from that point moving forward. In 2016, the town completed an asset management plan. Subsequent to that, Ontario Regulation 58817 was released, which continued the evolving nature of asset management. In 2019, Council passed the Strategic Asset Management Policy. In 2022, Council approved the Asset Management Plan for core assets, which included replacement costs, asset conditions, and levels of services. Here in 2024, we've updated that plan to include non-core assets. Following this report, there's another report on the agenda as well about the 2025 Asset Management Plan, which will continue to build on the asset management process and incorporate proposed levels of service, financial requirements out to approximately 10 years, and how to maintain those services. The town has a mixture of both core and non-core assets. Core assets tend to be linear in nature: roads, water pipes, wastewater pipes, stormwater pipes. Non-core assets are things such as building and facilities, vehicles or fleet, IT equipment and machinery and equipment, as well as land improvements. So as I mentioned, the 2024 AMP update focuses on actually non-core assets. The valuation of the town's non-core assets is over $120 million. This is comprised predominantly of buildings and facilities at $85 million. We have land improvement assets of about 20% or $23 million. That includes items such as parking lots, sports fields, sports courts, splash pad, things of that nature. Fleet includes vehicles and specialized vehicles. IT equipment includes hardware and software. And then our machinery and equipment includes things such as vehicle charging stations, floor scrubbers, zero-turn lawnmowers, and things of that nature. So we can see that facilities accounts for the vast majority of our non-core assets. In addition to non-core assets, we also have core assets, as mentioned, with a value exceeding $600 million. So in total, we have about $730 million in replacement cost with assets. This slide outlines the state or the condition profiles of our non-core assets. IT, fleet, machinery, and equipment have a majority of assets in the fair or better condition, whereas our land improvement and somewhat facilities have asset conditions that are based solely on age-based reporting, not on condition assessments, and that tends to not really show the true value of our conditions. It's better to have condition assessments done, and we have those done on the IT side and on the fleet side. So although we show some land improvements assets at a very poor condition or poor condition, that's predominantly based on the fact that we use age-based condition and is not as well structured as condition assessments. So we're hoping to improve that in the future and get more condition assessments on our facilities and our land improvement assets. This graph shows the annual funding required per non-core asset category. Fleet and information technology appear to be well-funded. Machinery and equipment and land improvement slightly lower, certainly lower than the annual requirements. The annual requirements are in blue, and the funding we have available is in green. The facilities category is also underfunded. However, upon the conclusion of debt payments, as you can see on the screen, should those debt payments for the Vollmer and Town Civic facilities be redirected, should that be council's choice at that time, the funding level for facilities would certainly increase and be closer to the actual annual required amount. As council may recall, the town's core infrastructure alone was funded at about 80% when we prepared that presentation last year. When reviewing all of our assets together, we are at a funding level of 65%. We believe this drop, a slight drop, when we're looking at all of our assets, is consistent with other municipalities. We found that most of them, when they're looking at all of their assets, they're lower funded than when they just look at their core assets. Not all of our regional neighbors have actually published the 2024 asset management plan today, but for those that have, they appear to be funded at a slightly lower level, ranging from about 40 to 55%. While we are at 65% funding level, significant increases have been incurred since 2016. We started 2016 by contributing $7.2 million to capital assets, and now we're up to $17 million in 2024. As you can see there, our goal is $26 million, as the $17 million is about 65% of that. Certainly inflation poses a challenge when it comes to replacement of capital assets, as the goal seems to keep getting farther away because of the rate of inflation. Also, I have on here our allocation-based grants, OSIF and CCBF, Canadian Community Building Fund. We use those to contribute to capital assets, but the majority of the funding comes from council decisions and contributing to capital reserves. As you may recall, during our budget presentation, we are on the lower side of our regional neighbors when it comes to allocation-based grants. So as you can see here, we get not much funding when it comes to CCBF and OSIF and other allocation-based grants, which puts the town certainly under pressure when it comes to trying to fund our capital asset needs. Additional information on asset management funding and the options available or to be planned is scheduled to be presented to council closer to the annual budget session. We're hoping to come back at that time with more information on asset management. The next steps for asset management is to continue to improve our data analysis, continue to update and improve the data contained within our citywide database, increase the number of condition assessments we do, so we're not relying on age-based analysis for condition profiles, service levels, continue to monitor and record service levels, as well as developing potential service levels for the next asset management plan. Upon approval of the asset management plan, it will be reported to the province and available on the town's website. That concludes a brief presentation on asset management and available for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just so I'm understanding, the jump from 2016 to now is from 7 to 17 million. Did I hear that right? So that's over $1 million a year that we've been building in? Correct.
Yes,
So
we built it up. There's been an increase,
so the increases come from where?
increases come from additional allocation-based grants as well as from the budget process.
Right, so we're talking over 2% a year just for that, from the budget, pretty much. Is that correct?
Yes.
Councillor Burns.
In the report, I see that you want to take the debenture for the Vollmer Center and put it into core management. Is that correct? Did I read that right?
That is a suggestion at the time the debenture ends. It'll be at council's decision should they choose to do that.
So my question is, it's not in this report, and we will not be committing to that at this meeting.
That is correct, Councilor.
Thank you, because I would have objected. It should be the next council or whenever that happens. Thank you. My only question.
Councillor Renner.
Well written.
I just had a question that goes back to the non-core assets at $85 million. Knowing that facilities like the Vollmer and this building and the event center are in that number, I'm just wondering, are we looking at them at replacement value or at original value? Because it doesn't seem like as high of a number as I would have expected.
These are replacement values.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, administration, for preparing the report. I know it's a requirement of the provincial government with respect to the regulations. I think it, you know, when this was first introduced back in 2016, I was the treasurer back then, and I could wish nothing further than to do this. However, I will say that it has, you can quote me on that, but I will say, though, that throughout the process, as we've evolved since that time, it has certainly put a highlight from our perspective, in what we do and how we fund our capital assets. I wish that other municipalities across Ontario took the same approach in trying to fund the assets in the same manner we do. We take a very aggressive role on that, and partly because if you listen to the presentation, we have $750 million of assets under our care and control. And so from that perspective, putting money aside, and while $17 million is probably more than any of our counterparts put away, or pretty close to, it really is only a drop in the bucket compared to the actual cost of replacing what we have. And that is only in the environment where we have a stable construction price index, which we have not had for the last 4, 5, 6 years. And so it really, this report, perhaps we should, present it at budget time rather than now, because it is important as we talk about budgets. And to Councillor Carrott's point, we put about somewhere around 2 to 3% of a tax increase today into what the levy, what that replacement amount is. I will tell you that in years past, our percentage increase wasn't as large as it is today, and so we might have put in 4 or 5%, 10 years ago to get that same amount in. We are in the unfortunate situation that we don't get a lot of grant funding. We've tried everything and continue to try to resolve that situation, but unfortunately, we're just in a gap in the funding mechanism with the provincial government. They're aware of it. They're looking into it, but that's as far as we ever get. But so it's on us. It really is on us to take care of the assets we have. Our replacement values on the core assets are in incredible shape, quite frankly. Our replacement plan, I should say, with our core assets is incredible shape. The non-core assets, which we talked about today, are less. Part of that is, to be honest, many of our assets are new, and to the point of the valuation of the assets that we have. A former mayor used to always say the oldest building we have is the Vollmer Center, which is true. And so much like, municipal finance is complicated, but in some ways it's just like running your own household. When you build a house, most people take a mortgage, hopefully pay off that mortgage in 5, 10, 15 years, hopefully, but the house lasts longer than that. And so once you get to that point, then it becomes a maintenance side. So the money that you put away for a mortgage payment suddenly goes to repair and maintenance on the home. And so we're no different. And we're just needing to build up that aspect. And you'll see similar portions of this presentation as part of the budget presentation as we advocate for more money to go into these things. And it's not, and this is, Councillor Carrick, to your point, this is not something that residents see right away. They don't, when we put away $1 million, an additional $1 million a year in something, it's not a pickleball court. It's not a new ice rink. It's not a new this or a new that. This is money we're putting aside because we know the costs are coming later, so that, we're not kicking the can down the road. And so that is the difficult choice, and it's a difficult path that we've chosen here at LaSalle. But I think it's paid off well in the sense that, we now have a capital contribution for asset replacement of $17 million, where, before we weren't putting away enough money to build the assets that we have at the cost when we built them. So we're in a much better place than we were then, but we still have some road to go, that's for sure.
Okay. Recommendations at the report of the Manager of Finance, Deputy Treasurer dated July 2nd, 2024 regarding the 2024 Asset Management Plan be received, and that Council approve the 2024 Asset Management Plan. Moved by Deputy Mayor Capata, support by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? And that carries. Back to Mr. Ferraro for our Asset Management Professional Services.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. The report before you seeks approval for administration to engage the services of PSD Citywide to assist the town and the completion of its 2025 asset management plan. This is a one-time expenditure, and the administration will be working with PSD over the next 12 months to complete this and meet the final phase of Ontario Regulation 58817. In addition, the 2025 asset management plan will assist the town as we continue to prioritize asset management principles to assist in decision-making with the town's capital assets. And again, we are available for any questions.
Any questions by council? Okay. Recommendations that the report of the Manager of Finance dated July 2nd, 2024 regarding the asset management professional services for the Town of LaSalle 2025 Asset Management Plan be received, and that council engages the services of PSD Citywide Incorporated to prepare the town's updated asset management plan, and that council authorizes the Manager of Finance Deputy Treasurer to prepare and sign all the necessary agreements to give effect to that agreement, and that the cost of this engagement be funded from the asset replacement and repair reserve. Moved by Councillor Carrick, support Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Item 6, updates to the routine disclosure and active dissemination policy. Our records and information management specialist, Lauren Uzinski, will get to speak at council for the first time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This report outlines some suggested changes to our current routine disclosure and active dissemination policy. First, I'm going to give a brief description of routine disclosure and active dissemination. I know it's quite a mouthful. So routine disclosure is the regular release of records to a member of the public without an FOI request under our privacy legislation, MFIPA. Active dissemination refers to a proactive release of town records in the absence of a request. So this may refer to documents that the town regularly posts on our website, or those that the town is legislated to make public, such as bylaws, council minutes, proposed budget, or the asset management plan that we just discussed. So the town's current routine disclosure and active dissemination was first published or passed in 2018. A review of the policy was necessary. We've had some significant changes in the types of documents maintained by each department of the town, and the policy has undergone significant updates. In order to compile a list of records available for requests through each department, I interviewed staff with each department. Managers and the department heads reviewed these results and signed off on the suggested changes. I'll just highlight some of the significant changes to the policy here. The roles and responsibilities section of the policy has been updated to include the responsibilities of the records and information management specialist position. That's me. This position will oversee the routine disclosure program rather than the clerk, which was in the previous policy. The content of the policy itself has undergone some major updates, including the rules governing the routine disclosure requests, the conditions of release, and the availability and exemptions of records that are available. Appendix A, which is a list of records available through each department, has undergone significant changes. I've updated the policy to include this and to reflect the addition of the human resources and the strategy and engagement departments. And communication plan for these updates. We've created a new website page which will be available to the public if the policy is approved. It'll list which types of records are available through each department and how to access these, and it'll provide a simplified online form for people to use to request these records. Internally, each department is going to be receiving some training sessions and follow-up sessions should they be needed. And we've created a new intranet page, which has resources for employees to use in responding to those requests. Please let me know if you have any questions for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? No? Okay. Well then, recommendation is that the report of the Records and Information Management Specialist dated June 24th, 2024 regarding the updates to the routine disclosure and active dissemination policy be received, and that the new routine disclosure and active dissemination policy be adopted by council and the previous version of the policy be repealed, and that Appendix A of the current user fee bylaw 8847 be amended to include the following: council services routine disclosure fees, courier mail fee as charged to the town, and storage media fee of $10. Moved by Councilor Richo Spagnolo, support by Councilor Burns. All in favor? That carries. Item 7, the Herb Gray Parkway land transfer. Our Director of Public Works, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we're seeking council authorization to complete some land transfers along the Herb Gray Parkway back to the town of LaSalle. These were parcels that were transferred to the MTO prior to the, prior to the construction of the parkway, and were needed to facilitate that construction. And we're now at a point in time where they're not needed for that and can come back to the town. So most of the parts are fairly smaller in nature and minor in nature. There's a couple that are a bit unique that I'll just touch on. The Huron Church cul-de-sac, so that's a piece of road that used to be Huron Church line where it kind of came up to Talbot. Now it's more of a residential cul-de-sac with, I believe, 4 houses on it or so. So that's a little different than what we had before. The other one is we're getting Chelsea Drive back. So that's been under the MTO jurisdiction for a while now, but that's coming back to us. And with that is coming a contribution from the MTO for future road paving on that road. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Councilor Carrick?
So I guess the question is this a good thing or is it costing us more money thing?
It's not costing us really more money than what we had before the parkway. That small piece of Huron Church, that cul-de-sac, for example, we wouldn't have done the snow removal on that before. The county would have done that as part of the connecting link, but it's fairly minor in nature. It's not a very big road, and Chelsea Drive we had before, so it was our road prior to. We just haven't haven't had it under our jurisdiction for the last 10 years or so. So it's not really costing us more money than what we had, originally as part of our assets prior to the parkway.
So I guess the question is then, we're doing the government a favor by helping them out a little bit, by assuming what they took from us, because we're going to meet them in AMO next month. So maybe we could have a little chit chat and let them know that we're helping them out quite a bit. Is that right?
I think we've been in talks with the MTO for the last 4 or 5 years on this now. The pieces that are coming back to us, they really kind of, when you look at it, logically make more sense for municipalities to have the jurisdiction over versus the highway or the MTO. But yeah, they are small pieces of roadway that are coming back to us.
Councilor Renham?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just remember from my first run of council 10 years ago that there were homes down Chelsea area that were expropriated for the Herb Gray. And I'm just wondering, anything that's coming back to us, there are no full parcels that can be converted. These are more just little tiny pieces.
No, these are primarily right-of-ways. They're not parcels for building lots.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Councilor Burns?
My only question is, what condition is Chelsea Road into today versus the condition we left it in? Is it better? Or is it worse? And is 88,000 enough?
So Chelsea, I don't know exactly what it was like when we gave it to them. I'm going to guess it wasn't perfect.
Put in here.
Okay. However, I think what the MTO was suggesting was that they pave Chelsea Road. They wanted to redo it and give it to us because a lot of the other roads have new asphalt on them. We asked them, instead of doing that, because we continually apply for grants in the Oliver Farm area to redo those roads, that we not waste their money and repave it and then rip it up again someday. So we asked for a contribution instead. So it was it's a recent value for repaving the road is what that value is.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I have one. The portion of road on Todd Lane, will we ever get that back? Right at the intersection where light is?
Are you speaking about the parcel land on the, oh, the
I
house?
say Ms. Beggs knows what parcel I'm talking about.
I wasn't aware that that was ours in the first place, but I'm not sure. I know the exact piece you were talking about. Do you mean the big house?
Yes, so I know there's restrictions with that property due to the MTO at that intersection, which is prohibiting some development that could happen there.
Again, I don't believe those were our lands in the first place, but I'm not sure. Maybe Mr.
Mr. Mara
Mara
wants to add
knows.
on.
I believe you're talking about the section of Todd Lane from 10th Street to the highway. So that would have been connecting link back in the day. That will probably never come back to us because they have an interchange there. So they will most likely keep that. There is a number of endangered species items that have been involved in that area as well. So the guess at this point is that's never going to come back to us.
That's too bad. The driveway there with where the lights are situated creates that parcel, not unusable, but for maybe a lot of functions that people are hoping for, so. Okay. Should we expect any other land? Go ahead.
Just on that, through a lot of our discussions, the MTO is aware that that is potential development. There's potential development there at that area. They've said they're, willing to, they understand that and they're willing to work with the town or, listen to what might make sense when something comes to be, or if a private property owner, comes forward with something. To date, no one's coming forward with anything there. So, but we've indicated that that is a potential area of development, so they're aware of that. And, in our discussions with them said they were open to different concepts that might come forward.
Good to know. Thank you. Okay. So we have a recommendation that the report of the Director of Public Works dated July 3rd, 2024 regarding land transfers to various parcels along the Urbary Parkway being transferred back to the town of Sal be received, and that council authorizes the transfers of those portions of land along Huron Church Line Road, Chelsea Road, Montgomery Drive, Surrey Road, Rossiter Road, Homestead Lane, and Sandwich West Parkway, and adopts the necessary bylaws to give effect to those transfers. Councilor Desjarlais, Deputy Mayor Capata, all in favor? That carries. Item 8, summary of Bill 185, implications for the town of LaSalle. Our Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Beggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm just trying to share my screen here. There we go. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that the legislative climate is continuing to evolve, and we remain on our toes. But we wanted to bring this report forward because we wanted to highlight some of these changes for council relative to the amendments that have been given royal assent. So Bill 185, Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act 2024, received royal assent June 6th of this year. And it's the province's most recent legislative effort to accelerate and streamline the approval process and build more homes faster. So Mr. Langlois and myself have come up with this report, and we'd like to review quickly for council some of the legislative changes associated with the Planning Act and the Development Charges Act. So with respect to the Planning Act, the province has new limitations to third-party appeals. So with respect to official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments, those were once able to be appealed by members of the public. They're no longer subject to appeal by third parties. They've also introduced the ability to appeal a settlement area boundary expansion. This mechanism did not exist previously, so they've integrated that into the Planning Act. That's not something that we anticipate having to deal with. We contemplate boundary expansions through the county OP process, typically. So I don't feel that this is necessarily impactful, but I wanted to note it for council consideration. And then the Bill 23 fee refunds have been rescinded. Bill 23 implemented a refund mechanism if decisions on site plan approval and rezoning applications weren't made within a certain time frame. The province has realized that that perhaps was not working, so they've since rescinded that fee refund regime. We at the town of LaSalle never experienced having to refund any fees, but it's helpful to know that that regime has been rescinded. The Planning Act prior to Bill 185 required and authorized municipalities to enact bylaws to require pre-consultation on new development applications. They've now removed that as a requirement and suggested that it remains voluntary on the part of the applicant to enter into pre-consultation exercise with the municipality, and the municipality can only encourage pre-consultation. Now they can no longer require it. Use it or lose it and the capacity allocation protocol. So the province has introduced new lapsing provisions relative to site plan approvals and plan of subdivision approvals, and the intent is to try to encourage those developers that have approvals to act on them instead of tying up the infrastructure and not allowing somebody else to use it. So we are now authorized to put caps on site plan approvals for a period of no less than 3 years, as well as plans of subdivision, which we already do anyways. The capacity allocation protocol is a bit of a new one. It's an amendment to the Municipal Act that allows municipalities to implement capacity allocation measures on how and when they allocate certain water supply and sanitary sewage supply to proponents. And then they've also introduced some Planning Act exemptions. Certain post-secondary institutions, as well as certain community type facilities are now exempt from approval processes under the Planning Act. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Langlois.
Thank you. Okay, so with regards to the Development Charge Act amendments, the first is they've revised the definition of capital costs. So as part of Bill 23, they took out the ability to include growth-related studies. So that was not defined as a capital cost, and they've reversed that. So that is now part of the definition. So our development charge study, official plan, different stormwater studies, water master plans, and other infrastructure-related plans can now be included. The cost of those can be funded from development charges, which is good news. Next, the removal of mandatory phase-in. This is the biggest one that was going to impact us the most. So under Bill 23, whenever there was a new development charge study completed, it would be phased in over 5 years. There'd be a 20% discount the first year. The second year, there'd be a 15% discount. Third year, 10%. Fourth year, 5%, and then it'd be at the full amount. Whenever there is a discount and full development charges aren't paid, the difference is funded through taxes. So this is good news. This is going to have this would have had the most negative impact on our tax rate, and they've removed that. So that's really good news. Next, the process for minor amendments to development charges bylaws. This doesn't really impact us because our current bylaw was in effect before Bill 23 took effect. But for those municipalities who have recently done a development charge background study, this minor amendment allows them to revise their current development charge studies to include, to add back these changes, these amendments. And then last, the reduction of the development charge rate freeze timelines. Those don't really, we haven't had a situation yet where we've experienced these development charge freeze related to site plan or rezoning bylaws. But if we ever did or do, the freeze time has changed from 24 months to 18 months. And those are the main items that are going to impact us. But overall, it's good news that they've reversed some of these decisions that were made part of the original Bill 23. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councilor Reno?
Just a comment. There's been a lot of talk around the community as we see more homes being built faster. I just want to thank our Director of Planning because I have a million questions, and it seems to be every Monday morning I wake up with a million questions and I send them all to her, and within minutes I get great information and great intel back. So I just wanted to say thanks because there's a lot of uneasy feelings out in the community as we start to see more semi-detached with ARUs, ADUs being put in the community where people aren't used to that. So it's helped open some conversations and some positive conversations in the community. So thank you for your information. It's been very helpful.
Any other questions or comments? I have two. So I know you said it doesn't really directly affect us, which is the appeal to the settlement area boundary. However, I do know at the county that is going to be a discussion because other neighboring municipalities are looking at doing just that, which at the end of the day affects the town of LaSalle residents in a way. So that's a good one to know. Thank you for letting us know about that because I do know that's definitely coming to us at the county. The second one was the use it or lose it. And how does that affect us in the Howard secondary plan that's being put together with that implementation of our capacity? Because I know that's a big part of the Howard Bouffard secondary.
Thank you for the question. So it's actually quite timely that the Municipal Act was amended to allow municipalities the ability to implement protocol on capacity allocation. As you know, as council's aware, we're working with the planning partnership on the secondary plan process. And one of the documents that we've been working on putting together is such a protocol. So when we come back to council for the statutory public meeting, we are going to be releasing those documents in draft form out to the public, and it will include a capacity allocation protocol where we explore how capacity is assigned, how additional capacity is sought, and when council can authorize and remove capacity from certain landowners.
Thank you. I think that was the second part, was what I was concerned about was that use it or lose it part of it. Because I know we want to make sure we're fair to all the landowners in that area by giving them each allocation to their property, but the use it or lose it kind of scares me a little bit but if we have control over that is what you're saying.
Yes, it will be up to council to decide.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, so the recommendations at the report of the Director of Planning and Development and the Director of Finance dated June 28th, 2024 regarding Bill 185, Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act 2024 be received for council information. Moved by Councillor Richo-Spagnolo, support by Councillor Burns, all in favor, and that carries. On to our consent agenda. There's 3 different items there. Does anyone want to pull anything out to speak specifically to it? If not, we'll approve them all together. There being none, if we can get a motion to receive all the items. Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Carrick. All in favor? And that carries. Committee matters? Questions and statements by council members. Deputy Mayor Capata, then Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to administration, yesterday, as part of a closed county council meeting, I had occasion to speak with my colleagues from the town of Amherstburg on my favorite topic, Phragmites, my friends. They are moving forward with a suggestion that we adopt a regional Phragmites approach, which, upon speaking to my colleagues, makes sense to me. Amherstburg's on one side, we're on the other. They do something we don't, or we do and they don't. The mitigation process for Phragmites is not effective. For your information, the mayor of the town of Amherstburg has written a letter to county council to suggest that we move into a regional Phragmites mitigation approach, which I'm sure some of the members of administration here are aware of. Again, I've got a number of residents in the community that are very excited when other municipalities speak that PH word to get rid of it, and I'm hoping that we can support, when it's appropriate through this body, a regional approach to the mitigation of Phragmites between all of our municipalities. I know that you work collaboratively together through multiple different groups, but this would be a standalone body, from what I understand what Mayor Prue is looking at, a standalone body to share best practices within Essex County for the mitigation of Phragmites in a multi-jurisdictional approach headed by the county. So I'm looking to someone to, is this a good idea? I haven't seen Mayor Prue's letter, but I understand that he has full council support, and I've got to believe that mitigation of Phragmites collaboratively from a regional approach might be something that we would be interested in. And I'm asking so that when I go to county council and I speak with Mayor Prue, I can say to him that I brought it up here, and it's something that I would connect the appropriate members of administration to move the discussion forward, Your Worship.
Mr. Osborne.
Thank you for the comment and the question. I think whenever we work collaboratively with our counterparts in the municipalities, it is helpful. It does make it a bit easier for everyone. So working with them for the Phragmites approach, I think would be beneficial. A lot of times though, when it comes down to actually implementing some sort of program, the amount of finance or the amount of money each municipality puts in can get a little complicated. So that's something that sometimes becomes a little harder to be consistent municipality to municipality, depending on budgets and things like that. But certainly to start off with, discussion and coming up with a regional group. I think there already is maybe a regional group to talk about Phragmites. Maybe this will just formalize it a bit more. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Thank you, Worship. That's what I was looking for, is that not the approval to move forward, but the tacit support that if a regional anti-Phragmites group was stood up, that it'd be something that the town of LaSalle would want to participate in support of Mayor Prue's letter that he's written to County Council. So what I'll do then, Your Worship, is I will take the comments back from leadership here when we go to the county and be able to speak to Mayor Prue from a level of understanding that this is something that we would want to make sure that our admin and his admin got together along with the people from the county to do a comprehensive Phragmites mitigation strategy, if that's the way it's going to go, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Councilor Reno?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for fire. Hi. So I've had some great conversations back and forth with the planning department about the new building homes faster and how many people are taking advantages of adding a second dwelling unit in their basement, in their attic, in their backyard. What I'm wondering is, are there any special fire codes or anything that has to be looked at before someone just arbitrarily turns their basement into an ARU, puts in a bathroom and a kitchen and calls it an apartment? Is there something that they should be looking at from our fire service before they go whole hog and do something like that?
Thank you for the question. In conjunction with planning, they have their building requirements, and we also have our requirements. Things such as smoke alarms, fire alarms, and CO detectors are all mandatory. And there's other rules, correct me if I'm wrong, with fire separations for different units and things like that. So if you're building a, say, basement apartment, there's some regulations around, like fire doors, things like that. And our fire prevention division would be happy to answer anybody's questions more specifically to those.
So that is something that would be vetted through a building permit?
So there's a lot of misinformation about additional residential units. But as we've been talking, as of right does not necessarily mean that you are exempt or precluded from getting a building permit. So just because you have an as of right permission that's stipulated within the zoning, you are still required to submit for a building permit application in order to build an ARU. So through that building permit process, the code is referenced and they have to comply with all the provisions of the code, which includes the appropriate fire prevention and fire safety mechanisms and drawings are in place in order to be able to authorize a building permit.
Thank you very much.
No other questions, statements? No. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Meloche. Just two things just quickly to announce. Again, you heard from, I'm never going to get this right, the last name right, but Mrs. Uzinski. Did I get that right? Okay, I didn't get it right. So Lauren obviously has taken a more active role, a more prominent role as part of our clerk's area with respect to records management and information. Her official title is Records Management and Information Specialist. We've had another employee, Melissa Malash, backfill her position, so we're very happy about seeing that transition happen in the clerk's area. On a not so happy side, we are losing one of our clerk members, or clerk department members. Natalie Sharp has taken a deputy clerk's position with an adjacent municipality. So sad to see her go, but wish her well on her career move. But certainly it's nice to see that we can promote from within and expand our profile. And it's also, although bittersweet, nice to see some of our staff move on to higher roles in other organizations. So congratulations to everyone on their new roles as we see them coming forth.
Congratulations, and I feel like I need to have a conversation with the mayor of that municipality, because I believe that's 2 recently. And we have great staff, and we're keeping them, so stop coming. I'll make it clear. Any notices of motion? Notices of motion? No. We don't have a closed session to report this evening, so we have bylaws, and bear with me as there are several. That the following bylaws be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Bylaw 8898, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a municipal funding agreement on the Canada Community Building Fund between the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle. 8902, a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell an alley system running north-south lying east of lots 924, 927, both inclusive, registered plan 793, LaSalle. 8903, a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell an alley system running north-south lying east of lots 104 to 106, both inclusive, registered plan 635, and an alley system running east-west lying north of lots 97 to 103, both inclusive, registered plan 635, LaSalle. Bylaw 8904, a bylaw to stop up, close, and sell an alley system running east-west lying north of lots 220 to 236, both inclusive, registered plan 664, LaSalle. 8905, a bylaw to authorize execution of a lease extension agreement between First Canadian Properties Corporation and LaSalle Bella Vista Limited and the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle. And 8907, a bylaw to confirm the transfer of lands between the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle and the Ministry of Transportation. And finally, 8908, a bylaw to assume certain lands as part of public highway. Councilor Riccio Spagnolo, support. Councilor Desjarlais, all in favor? And that is carried. Our confirmatory bylaw 8909 is going to be given a first, second, third reading and finally passed. Councilor Reno and Councilor Burns, all in favor? That carries. Your schedule of meetings are attached. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.